The Democratic debates recently highlighted some of this for me about politicians once more. So many people just think their favorite candidate has it all figured out, and that's the answer to everything. The candidates convey certainty, and their supporters eat it up. And I don't even have to wonder about what would happen if a candidate told the truth about not knowing everything. This is a perfect picture of what happens to humans in society. We seem to crave certainty from our leaders so much that we'll choose from a field of bad choices who all lie to us and convey a faux expertise. But a better leader who actually didn't know everything, who grappled with human limits to understanding and admitted those limits, that person couldn't get elected. That person wouldn't even make it to the early rounds of debates. What I've been personally grappling with is some of these issues that you've been exploring about around certainty, but from the manager, professor, surgeon, politician side of things. The world would be better if people in positions of leadership could be more humble. What are those people to do when they find themselves in situations where other people desperately need them to convey a certainty that they can't convey with integrity? I've followed a particular path where people would fault me for being too honest about what I don't know sometimes, but I still have strong opinions and I'm very willing to make decisions in situations of uncertainty and deal with the consequences. Other people in the same position, particularly in medicine, I think, blatantly lie about how things are going to turn out. Maybe that's even a more ethical choice if the effect of that on a patient is to support recovery and greater health. But is it? As a professor, you can truly argue that portraying intellectual humility to your students is helping them to develop their critical reasoning skills, learn the limits of their knowledge. But that's not the social role of a surgeon. Before surgery is not the time and place to confront the families of patients with abstract ideas about the limits of our knowledge. And perhaps we can wish that our politicians were more realistic in their pronouncements, but isn't that just a pointless sentiment if we know that those who require social support to be chosen as leaders face no chance of selection if they're humble about what they know and what they can't know? On either side, what would happen to a candidate who just admitted that the problem of school shootings was a desperately difficult one that we just might not have a solution to? In all of those situations, there's still this dynamic of how most people look up to people who are, quote, leaders and demand certainty, or they ditch them. It's difficult to stay in a social role that other people look up to if you're intellectually honest. Perhaps a professor can with tenure, but what about someone just starting down that path? Politicians certainly can't. Business leaders who don't put on their inspiring leader hat have less success because some employees lose faith if they're not constantly inspired. Turnover is higher. Surgeons who tell the truth might have poorer outcomes as well, and it seems like there's some evidence to suggest that. The young woman who wanted me to be more like Gene Kranz at NASA left her job later to go on to work for a larger bureaucracy with presumably a manager that had more answers. A couple of years later, that company basically went bust and got acquired by a competitor. But was her life better for the next year or two with more certainty? So where's my question in all of this? I guess it's just, I'm curious about your thoughts on the ethical side of how people in positions of leadership should handle the burden placed on them by everyone else that says they should have certainty. You're usually talking about these issues from the perspective of everyone else in their interactions with those in positions of authority. What about from the perspective of the manager, the surgeon, the professor, the politician, and so on?